Middle Eastern leaders decline calls from Biden. The BA.2 stealth subvariant of Omicron is coming. And could the Russia-Ukraine conflict be ending soon? Then more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. FEMA announced the U.S. has provided more than $2 billion to over 300,000 families to help cover funeral costs for those who died of COVID-19. FEMA is trying to raise awareness to families eligible for this aid. The average amount given per death is $6,500. To receive it, you must provide a death certificate. And hopefully, death certificates are better than many hospitals at clarifying people who died of COVID versus people who died with COVID. Otherwise, many families might try to knock off Uncle Jimmy once he tests positive, so they can make an easy $6,000. It says right there on the death certificate, he had COVID when he died. Who knew that 32 stab wounds was a symptom? Although I wouldn't be too optimistic about receiving that aid. If this COVID relief is like most other COVID relief, then the majority of that money is going to go missing, and the funds we can trace will go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, which is at least somewhat appropriate this time since their food has led to many funerals. Speaking of rich people and spreading disease, Pete Davidson. The SNL star will join 5 other paying customers in taking a suborbital flight later this month aboard Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin rocket. It makes sense this is something Davidson would be into, after all. Space is the only place he can go to find stars he hasn't already hooked up with. Bezos said his goal is to offer Blue Origin suborbital trips more regularly to people who can afford it. While space tourism offered exclusively to the rich and famous may at first seem excessive and elitist, it might actually wind up being a good thing. Blue Origin is in the process of building a rocket titled New Glenn that can reach orbit, not just suborbit. And that could be important for the U.S. since Russia's Federal Space Agency announced it would stop selling rocket engines to the U.S. The Russian chief said, "Let them fly on something else, their broomsticks." I know that was supposed to be a diss, but I welcome the challenge, since it would make my Harry Potter in space fan fiction a reality. Forget Slytherin. The new coolest Hogwarts house is Gryffindorbit. See? My Harry Potter fan fiction is way better than that other Harry Potter fan fiction I got tricked into reading a few years ago. Yes, this is a real thing that happened. No, I'm still not over it. This Russian rocket engine sales ban actually won't affect the U.S. much since only one major aerospace company, Northrop Grumman, uses Russian engines. But it's good to make sure we're producing more resources domestically. Otherwise, we may end up in an awkward position, like asking Saudi and United Arab Emirates leaders that don't trust the U.S. to help us combat record-breaking oil prices in the wake of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And there have been reports that these leaders declined calls with President Biden. If they did, I can't really blame them. It's kind of like that old cautionary tale. If you give an American mouse some oil, they're going to stick around for 20 years, then suddenly pull out without any real plan, giving control back to the Taliban mice. More after the break. Welcome back. China announced 5,100 new COVID cases in a single day, the largest outbreak they've seen since the initial one in Wuhan. If you're thinking, wait, 5,100 cases is a major outbreak for them? Those are rookie numbers. Florida had 5,100 cases for every 2,200 people. You should know those numbers are wrong. The Chinese Communist Party isn't exactly transparent with their information. Asking China about their COVID cases is like asking your significant other how many people they've been with. Whatever they say, you can at least double it, especially if you're asking Pete Davidson. Either way, China locked down 51 million people as a result of this COVID spike. Locking down millions of people over a preposterous and frankly harmful level of precaution? Who do they think they are, Canada? I covered the story more extensively in yesterday's China Uncensored episode. You should check that out. The Chinese COVID spike and many other rising COVID cases around the globe are being attributed to a new stealth subvariant of Omicron called BA.2. BA is an appropriate name since every time you hear about a new COVID variant, your reaction is BAH! BA.2 is called a stealth variant because when it was first detected in November, it was hard for scientists to distinguish this Omicron subvariant from other COVID variants, specifically Delta. And that's led to some woke activists to call these scientists racist. What do you mean all coronaviruses look the same? How dare you? As if COVID hasn't suffered enough with the government trying to systematically suppress it. The good news is now that Delta is rare, BA.2 is no longer stealth. But that's not going to stop the media from calling it stealth because that sounds way cooler and scarier, which means more clicks. As of right now, it appears BA.2 is more infectious than Omicron, but it is not currently believed to carry a higher risk of severe infection. A professor at Warwick University said it's clear that BA.2 is more transmissible than BA.1, and this, combined with the relaxation of mitigation measures and waning immunity, is contributing to the current surge in infections. BA.2 is believed to make up nearly a quarter of COVID cases in the U.S. However, epidemiologists currently doubt it will cause a large new spike. Right now, it seems like COVID is a modern video game. It's super buggy. It was huge when it first came out, then whenever the hype dies down, new downloadable content and additions come out, despite the fact that people have been overplaying this game for at least a year already. I just hope we can speedrun our next pandemic. We'll possibly have more time to now, since the Senate unanimously passed the Sunshine Protection Act, which would make daylight saving time permanent in the U.S. This means if it also passes the House and is signed into law by President Biden, we would no longer need to set our clocks back in the fall, and we will have more sunlight during the evening. This would be a victory for all of us who hate dark winter nights, and especially for those of us who can't remember how to adjust the clocks on our microwaves. And after the break, more on the war between Russia and Ukraine. Welcome back. The UN reported that 3 million refugees have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion began, and more than 2 million people are displaced within Ukraine. This marks the fastest growing refugee crisis in Europe since World War II, and the largest and quickest mass exodus I've seen since that music festival where they announced a surprise performance by the Dave Matthews Band. A 4-hour jam session? Everybody run! Ukrainians are fleeing amidst increased Russian hostility. Russian forces have killed dozens of Ukrainian citizens after attacking a theater, a school, a maternity hospital, and some apartment buildings. This is tragic. Besides the loss of life, these were people's homes, and now they look worse than apartments going for $3,000 a month in San Francisco. If asked why housing prices have been rising so steeply over the past year, Biden would likely say it's the Putin price hike. Just ask the TikTokers. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky delivered a virtual address to the U.S. Congress on Wednesday, seeking support in his fight against Russia. He asked Congress to do more and inflict more sanctions on Russia, saying peace is more important than income. This speech was inspiring, mostly because Zelensky is a former comedian, and Zoom shows are always the worst for them to perform on. It's no wonder Zelensky is such an effective military leader, though. As a comedian, he has lots of experience killing and bombing. In a speech he gave earlier in the week, Zelensky offered Russian soldiers a chance to survive, asking them to surrender. If you surrender to our forces, we will treat you the way people are supposed to be treated, as people, decently, in a way you were not treated in your army, and in a way your army does not treat ours. Choose. Wow. Zelensky's strategy is basically the plot to every song about a guy telling a girl she should leave her boyfriend and be with him because he'd treat her better. Zelensky is also trying to win over Russia. Peace talks this week between the two nations have reportedly gone more smoothly, with a Ukrainian negotiator saying, "I think we will achieve some results literally in a matter of days." And Russia's foreign minister said a neutral status is being seriously discussed in connection with security guarantees. There are concrete formulations that, in my view, are close to being agreed. A spokesperson for the Kremlin clarified what this neutrality would entail. Ukraine is offering an Austrian or Swedish version of a neutral, demilitarized state, but at the same time, a state with its own army and navy. While this sounds constructive, I wouldn't get too excited just yet, though. Ukraine hasn't yet confirmed they would be willing to become neutral. And trusting Russia to keep their word about stopping an invasion is like trusting the Chinese Communist Party about their COVID numbers. Or Pete Davidson when he says he just wants to be friends. However, Zelensky said he is willing to compromise, specifically admitting that Ukraine would not join NATO and rely on themselves and their partners. This would make Russia very happy, as the possibility of Ukraine joining NATO was a major reason they invaded in the first place. At least that's what they said. However, their aggression towards Ukraine over the possibility of joining NATO has led to Sweden and Finland to reconsider joining NATO. And if they did, that would possibly spark aggression from Russia, which could possibly lead to even more countries trying to join NATO. At this point, I'm not sure if Russia has a serious anger problem or if they're secretly getting paid to recruit for NATO. Lastly, if you enjoy the jokes on America Uncovered, especially the dark ones, one of our writers is a professional stand-up comedian. His name is Nat Baymel, and he just put out a new comedy album.
I say we should storm the Capitol every year. Think of it like an annual aggressive job performance evaluation.
Nat's album is called Nihilist Pep Talk. You should check it out. You can order it on Amazon and iTunes or listen to it on Spotify and Pandora, whichever mega conglomerate you find least objectionable. I'm sure you'll love it. Or at least be very offended by it. Either way, comedy gold. The link is in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.